you mentioned there are four phases of parenting, and you did mention one of the phase, which is to hand over, organize and hand over to the child. For parents who have complex children, they might think that they have to micromanage every single thing because the child is not organized. They're always jumping off the wall. They're doing this, doing that, and everything is chaotic. So they have to micromanage them. You're saying that's not necessarily the case, but there are phases of parenting that you can go through with your complex child to support them. So can you give us a quick overview of what those phases are?
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm trying to decide where to start because I was talking to a mom this morning of a 23-year-old young adult with ADHD and Asperger's and or high functioning autism. And and so he's ready for a different level. And so how you would respond depends on, it's all about meeting your kid where they are. So there are four phases of parenting. Phase one is what we call the director mode. And that's the phase we start parenting. And unfortunately, that's the phase many of us get stuck in. And as you're saying, when life is chaotic, you feel like you need to direct everything because they can't do it on their own. The problem is, as long as you're directing everything, they're not going to do it on their own. Why should they? You're doing it for them. So we do still want to scaffold, but you want to begin to start looking for areas of independence, looking for areas where your kids can take on independence. And you can begin to shift out of director mode into stage two, which is collaboration. And most of our time as active parents, I believe, probably needs to be spent in this collaborative phase where we are not exactly directing, because as the director, we hold the agenda, but we're moving into collaboration where we're kind of sharing the agenda with our kid and beginning to help them see it as their agenda and begin to take ownership in their life. So we spend a lot of time here in phase two. And then phase three or stage three is the support phase. At this point, your kid's taking independence and you're moving out of collaboration and into a support role. How can I help you? What do you need from me? Or what supports do you need that might not be me? What do you need for help? But by the time you're in phase three, your kid's already owning the agenda. They are in the lead and you're supporting. In phase two, you're still sharing the agenda. So we really want to begin to think about how are we giving kids a sense of agency. So director, collaborator, phase three is support. And then phase four, that's the champion phase. Most of us want to be here, right? This is the goal of parenting, is that we're the sage counsel and our kids come to us for advice because they're living their own life. But the truth is most of our kids aren't going to get there till their late 20s or 30s. And so, but what happens is at about 12 to 14, they start wanting independence. And because we haven't been collaborating, we've been stuck in director, the kids start wanting independence. They push back and say, I've got it. Parents get frustrated and they go, okay, fine, you've got it, go for it, do it. And then parents jump to here, they pull themselves out completely. The kid, crashes out because they're not ready for it. And then the parent says, see, I told you you couldn't do it. And they go back to phase one and say, see, I have to do everything for you. So this is the problem that parents get into, is we jump from 1 to 4, when where our kids really need us to be is 2 and 3, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for like 10 years.
And
Right?
as I'm listening to the phases, I know parents are gonna say, okay, what examples? So let's use the infamous homework, because I
Yes.
think everybody,
Yep.
every
That's what we
parent
teach.
has had some issues with homework not being done, incomplete, and so on. So work us through the four phases of what that could look like, so parents have an idea. Oh, okay, I see where this is what I'm doing incorrectly and how I need to change.
Okay, I love that. So, and let me put the caveat on it that we're going to go through the stages, but they're going to be different for every kid, because this has to do with what is your kid ready from you, right? So it's not the stage of the kid, it's the stage of the parent. And your kid could need you to be in phase two when it comes to getting their sports gear ready, but phase one when it comes to homework, and phase four when it comes to managing their friendships, right? So it's not linear. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4. You're constantly dancing and moving between these based on what your kids developmentally need from you. So if you look at homework, a younger kid might, they come home, you might say, this is what your homework is today. This is when you're going to do it. And then we're going to have a snack, and then we'll be able to go play outside. So we're giving them the direction, we're giving them the time frame, we're giving them a motivation, right? We're going to have a snack and get to go play, setting the expectation. We're holding the agenda that they're going to do their homework. Right? That's phase one. Most kids are in that phase through elementary years. That starts to shift for typical kids somewhere in elementary years, depending on the development of that child. Phase two parenting around homework would be to start asking questions. In phase two, the most important thing about collaboration is questions. So you might say, what do you have for homework today? Or I got your thing. Do you want to go over together what your homework is for today? These are the different times that you could do it. When do you want to do it? Where do you want to do it? My kid used to do most of her homework on the dining room table, lying down on the table. I had another one who loved to do all of their reading in a tree. So where do you want to do it? So you're giving them a sense of agency and self-determination and control. They're not saying, I got this, but you're not saying this is how you're going to do it. You're really giving them options so that they can make some choices and they can begin to feel the ownership of this homework is mine to do. And I have some good support here to figure out how to make it work in my life. So in phase two, you might be saying, these are the different times, because you remember we have this thing tonight that you really wanted to do. So would you like to make sure you get it done this afternoon, or do you want to? So you're giving them choice. You're asking questions. Phase three, you're moving into a support role. For neurotypical kids, this is usually pretty well established. This is what we're starting to work on in the middle school years, and ideally is well established by high school years. With complex kids, you may be kind of moving more into this in the high school years. It just depends, again, on your individual child's development. But in the phase three, you might say, what do you have on your agenda today? When do you plan to be getting done? Did you arrange that study group you said you wanted? Is there anything from me you need from me? So you're no longer telling them what needs to be done or really helping them figure out. You're checking in on, how can I support you? I know you said you were going to talk to your teacher about that. What happened with that conversation? So you're moving into a reinforcement and support role instead of a guiding role, because it's now their agenda and you're supporting it. And then phase four, often our kids, it might be maybe in college, maybe beyond college. Often kids with complex issues may need some other accountability structure in the university years, if they still need some support there. But once they're in phase four, they're really independently functioning and then coming to you to get reinforcement, to get some championing, for some advice. I have one of my kids was very independent at university and was mostly in I was mostly in phase four with her at university. And then exams would come, or a sports season would come when she was captain of the team, and stress would get higher. And then she would need me to go back into different phases. One point, she even needed me to go back to collaboration with her, even though she was in college, to talk through, what are your options? What supports are available to you? Oh yeah, I can go back to the disability office at school, move back into phase three with her. And then with a couple of weeks, she was back in I was back in phase four with her. So it's really a fluid dance, and it really is paying attention to where your kids are and what they need in that moment.
Yes, and as you said, what they need in that moment, one of the things that jumped out to me as you were speaking is the dining room table example,
Yeah.
because so many of us as parents were raised that you do your homework at the table, you sit upright, no
Yes.
distractions, everything is fine, and
Right.
then you assume that your child will do the same thing, and you see them squirming and they're looking bored and they just can't function. And then some parents might become hard on them, not realizing that might have worked for you, but for your complex child, you have to find a way. So you have to collaborate with them to find a way that works best for them.
I have this very strong memory of a tutor for one of my kids literally lifting their head and making their head straight. And I remember thinking, this is not going to work. Like, I bought it for a couple of weeks, and then I was like, nah, this is not going to work. And we got another tutor. Like, it's not, my kid needed to be able to read a book in a tree. And they loved to read. My deal was, you can't do homework that requires writing in a tree. That was that was
Yes.
that's where I crossed the line. But my middle kid, who's now a pre-med student and studying for the MCATs, did most of her homework lying on the dining room table with a foot hanging off the end so she could bounce her foot. She just needed the movement.
Yes, that is a perfect example to share with parents who might have a rigid way of how their children should complete tasks at home.
Yes.
Maybe you have to find a way that works best for them.